She didn't leave me. She lost me.
The first thing I noticed when I walked into my home office wasn't the overturned papers or the rifled desk drawers. It was Greg Hartman, crouched behind my computer, USB drive in hand, looking like a kid caught stealing cookies. Except these weren't cookies. They were my proprietary security algorithms worth about $2 million. "Evening, Greg," I said, flipping on the lights. "Working late?" He jumped so hard he knocked over my coffee mug. The one that said, "World's Best Husband." A gift from my wife Samantha 3 Christmases ago, back when she actually meant it. "Jesus, David, you scared me." Greg scrambled to his feet, pocketing the USB drive with all the subtlety of a drunk magician. "Sam sent me to grab some files for the Morrison project." "Did she now?" I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "That's interesting, considering the Morrison project was canceled last month." Face went through more colors than a mood ring. Red, white, then a sickly green that matched his polo shirt. "I meant the Henderson project. You know how these project names all sound the same?" "Sure they do." I stepped aside and gestured toward the hallway. "Why don't we go ask Sam about it? She's in the kitchen with your boss." The color drained completely from Greg's face. "My boss?" "Mr. Lamont stopped by about an hour ago." Funny thing about CEOs, they hate being called at home about employees breaking into other employees' houses. Really puts them in a mood. I've been planning this moment for 3 weeks, ever since I'd installed the hidden cameras and discovered my wife's little side business. Turns out, while I'd been working 60-hour weeks to build our nest egg, Samantha had been building her own nest with my junior colleague and plotting to steal everything I'd created. Greg tried to bolt for the front door, but I'd locked it when I came in. Old habit from my security consulting days. Always control the exits. "Kitchen's this way," I said, enjoying the way his shoulders sagged in defeat. The kitchen looked like a war room. Samantha sat at our breakfast table across from Harold Lamont, CEO of Meridian Tech, where we all worked. Between them lay printouts of my source code, financial records, and what looked like a resignation letter with my forged signature. "There's our star of the show," I announced as Greg shuffled in behind me. Found him copying my files. Again. Samantha's head snapped up. For a split second, I saw panic flash across her face before she slipped back into the mask she'd been wearing around me for months, the patient, long-suffering wife dealing with a paranoid husband. "David, honey, you're being ridiculous. Greg was just helping me organize your work files. You've been so scattered lately." "Scattered." I savored the word like fine wine. "That's one way to put it. Mr. Lamont, would you like to see just how scattered I've been? Unrestricted." Harold Lamont was a thin man in his 50s with the personality of wet cardboard, but he had a nose for corporate theft that could smell embezzlement from 3 states away. He'd built Meridian from a 2-person startup into a $50 million company by trusting no one and verifying everything. "I'm listening," he said. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to our kitchen TV. 3 weeks ago, I noticed some irregularities in our system logs. Someone was accessing my development server after hours, copying files they had no business touching. So I did what any good security consultant would do. I investigated. Filling the screen, Greg, alone in the office at midnight, downloading my encryption algorithms onto a personal drive. The timestamp showed last Tuesday. "That's from our office security system," I explained. "Funny thing about being the guy who installed those cameras, I have all the access codes." Greg opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a finger. "Wait, there's more." The second video showed Samantha in our home office, photographing my handwritten notes with her phone. She was being careful, making sure each page was clearly visible. "This one's from last Saturday. You remember, Sam? You said you were organizing my desk as a surprise. Very thoughtful." My wife's mask was slipping. The patient, loving expression cracked around the edges, revealing something harder underneath. "David, you're being paranoid. I was just helping Greg steal my work so you could sell it to TechFlow Industries?" I clicked to the next video. This is from yesterday. Samantha and Greg in his car, parked outside a coffee shop downtown. "He's so trusting." Samantha's voice filled the kitchen. "David thinks I'm the perfect wife. He has no idea I've been copying everything for months. What if he finds out? Greg's voice, nervous and whiny. He won't. And even if he does, who's going to believe him? I've been telling everyone he's been acting strange, paranoid. By the time we're done, he'll look like he had a breakdown and tried to sabotage his own company. Lamont's expression never changed, but I saw his hand move to his phone. There's about 6 hours of this, I said, pausing the video. But my personal favorite is the part where you discuss how to forge my signature on a resignation letter. Very detailed. You even practiced my handwriting. The kitchen fell silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Greg looked like he might throw up. Samantha had gone completely still, her mind probably racing through damage control scenarios. Harold finally spoke. How long has this been going on? Ben's on the server logs? About 4 months. But I suspect the planning started earlier, probably around the time TechFlow started their competing product line. David, you're taking this all wrong, Samantha tried one last time. We were trying to protect your work. TechFlow was going to steal it anyway, so we thought... You thought you'd steal it first and collect the bounty. I closed the laptop. Very noble. Very entrepreneurial. Harold stood up, straightening his tie. Greg, you're fired. Clean out your desk tonight. Security will escort you. Slashing. Ritali, please, I can explain. Samantha, you're also terminated. Effective immediately. My wife's mask finally shattered completely. You can't do this. I'll sue for wrongful termination. I'll claim harassment. David's been stalking me, recording me without consent. Shirts. In your own home, Harold said calmly, which is legal, and the office recordings are company property, which makes Greg's theft a felony. He looked at me. David, I assume you want to press charges. Melting, I pretended to consider it. You know what? No. I think public humiliation will be punishment enough. That's when Samantha lunged at me. She came across the kitchen like a wildcat, nails aimed at my eyes, screaming something about ruining her life. I sidestepped, reflexes from my boxing days, and she crashed into the refrigerator, sending magnets and family photos cascading to the floor. Greg, showing the kind of loyalty that had gotten him into this mess, tried to grab my arm. Leave her alone, man. Assaulting him off easily. Greg was 20 pounds lighter and spent his workouts taking selfies at the gym. Touch me again, and I'll add assault to your resume. Harold was already on his phone with building security. Yes, I need an escort for 2 terminated employees. Immediately. Marlon's Dramia picked herself up off the floor, her perfect hair disheveled, her designer blouse torn. For the first time in months, I was seeing the real her. Not the loving wife act, not the professional colleague facade, but the cold, calculating woman who'd been planning to destroy me. You think you've won? She hissed. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I'll take everything. The house, the cars, your reputation. When I'm done with you, you'll be lucky to get a job at Best Buy. Looking forward to it, I said. Should be entertaining. Misunderstand. 20 minutes later, I watched from my front window as Harold's security team escorted my wife and her accomplice to their cars. Greg kept looking back at the house like he expected me to come running after them with an apology. Samantha never looked back at all. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my favorite chair, the leather recliner Sam had always hated because it didn't match her aesthetic. The house felt different already, quieter, like a weight had been lifted. My phone buzzed with a text from Harold. Take tomorrow off. We'll discuss your promotion Monday. Prometheus. Marathon. That was unexpected. But then, I'd just saved the company about $10 million in stolen intellectual property and prevented a major lawsuit. Corporate loyalty was rare these days, but preventing corporate theft was always rewarded. Over the next week, the fallout spread through our social circle like wildfire. Samantha had been busy for months, laying groundwork for her betrayal by telling everyone I was becoming paranoid, controlling, possibly having a breakdown. She'd painted herself as the long-suffering wife, dealing with an increasingly unstable husband. The problem with building a lie that elaborate is that it collapses spectacularly when the truth comes out. My first indication came at Tom Bradley's barbecue that Saturday. Tom and I had been friends since college, but when I arrived, The conversation stopped like someone had hit a pause button. "Hey, David," Tom said, his voice carefully neutral. "How are you holding up?" "Resolved." "Great, actually. Best I've felt in months." Tom exchanged glances with his wife, Jennifer. "We heard about the divorce and the work situation." Sam called Jennifer, explained what happened. "Did she now? What's she now? What's her version?" Jennifer stepped forward, her expression a mix of concern and accusation. "She said you've been recording her without permission, following her, accusing her of having an affair. David, that's not healthy behavior." I sipped my beer and looked around the patio. 8 couples, all friends from our social circle, all watching me with varying degrees of pity and suspicion. Samantha had done her work well. Anything else? Marginalized. "She said you tried to get her fired by making up stories about her stealing from the company," Tom added. "David, I've known you for 15 years. This doesn't sound like you." Relinquicates. "You're right. The old me would have just filed for divorce and walked away quietly." I set down my beer. But the old me didn't know his wife was planning to steal his life's work and frame him for corporate sabotage. "That's a serious accusation," said Mike Chen, another college buddy. "Do you have proof?" I pulled out my phone and opened the video app. "How much time do you have?" 20 minutes later, the patio's presentation was just more. 20 minutes. The patio was silent, except for the sound of meat burning on the forgotten grill. I'd shown them 3 videos. Samantha and Greg planning the theft, Samantha practicing my signature, and my personal favorite, Samantha on the phone with someone at TechFlow, negotiating the sale price for my algorithms. "Jesus Christ," Tom whispered. "How long was this going on?" Probation. Months, maybe longer. She's been telling everyone I'm paranoid, while systematically stealing everything I've worked for. I pocketed the phone. But hey, I'm sure she had her reasons. Crimson looked like she might cry. "David, I'm so sorry. When she called, she seemed so upset, so scared. She said you'd been acting erratically, that she was afraid of you. Classic projection. Accuse your victim of the crimes you're committing." I picked up my beer. Psychology 101. The conversation that followed was awkward, but necessary. One by one, my friends apologized for doubting me, for taking Samantha's side without hearing my story. They'd all received similar calls from her, painting me as an increasingly unstable husband who was making wild accusations. But the damage was already spreading beyond our immediate circle. Monday morning at work, I discovered that Samantha's smear campaign had extended into our professional network. 3 different colleagues approached me with concerns about my mental health. Apparently, word was spreading that I'd had some kind of breakdown and was making paranoid accusations against innocent coworkers. The irony was delicious. While I was being painted as paranoid, I was actually being promoted. Harold had recommended me for the director of security position, complete with a 40% salary increase and stock options. "Congratulations," said Ruby Martinez, Harold's assistant, as she handed me the promotion paperwork. "Though I have to ask, how did you know?" "Know what?" "That they were planning to frame you. Sam came to see Mr. Lamont last week, before your little kitchen drama. She wanted to report you for erratic behavior, said you'd been making threats." I stopped signing the papers. "She what?" "She had a whole story prepared. You'd been acting paranoid, accusing her of having an affair, threatening to sabotage the company if she left you. She even brought fake emails supposedly from you, talking about revenge against coworkers who didn't support you." "Fake emails?" "Very convincing ones. If Mr. Lamont hadn't already seen your evidence, he might have believed her." Ruby leaned closer, lowering her voice. "She also suggested that you'd been stealing company secrets to sell to competitors. Said she'd found evidence, but was afraid to come forward because you'd threatened her." The scope of Samantha's betrayal was breathtaking. She hadn't just been planning to steal my work. She'd been preparing to destroy my reputation and frame me for her own crimes. If I hadn't discovered the theft when I did, I'd be the one getting fired and possibly facing criminal charges. "What did Harold say?" "He told her he'd investigate thoroughly. Then he called you." Ruby smiled. Best poker face I've ever seen. Sam walked out thinking she'd won. That afternoon, I decided to visit Greg at his new job. According to LinkedIn, he'd landed at a small consulting firm downtown. Probably the only place that would hire him after being fired from Meridian for theft. The office was a step down from Meridian's glass tower. Fluorescent lights, beige carpeting, the lingering smell of microwaved lunch. I found Greg in a cubicle that would have fit in Meridian's supply closet. David. He looked up from his computer with the expression of a man who'd been expecting this visit.
What do you want?
Just checking on an old colleague. How's the new job? Refugees. It's fine. Greg's voice was flat, defeated. Look, if you're here to gloat, trolley. Actually, I'm here to thank you. That got his attention. Thank me? For being so obvious about it. If you'd been smarter, more subtle, I might never have caught on. But copying files at midnight? Using your own login credentials? That was sloppy, Greg. Almost insultingly sloppy. Repaints. Greg's face reddened. We weren't trying to hurt you, David. The plan was for everyone to win. TechFlow was going to hire you as a consultant once they acquired the algorithms. You would have made more money than you ever did at Meridian. Except nobody asked me if I wanted to sell my work. Said no. You're too loyal to Harold, too stuck in your ways to see the bigger picture. Premiership. The bigger picture being that you and my wife steal my life's work and I should be grateful? Greg stood up, his voice rising. Your wife was miserable, David. She felt trapped in a marriage with a man who cared more about his computers than her. She deserved better. Raining. She deserved my algorithms? The doorbell chimed. So other office had gone quiet. Other employees were pretending not to listen, while obviously hanging on every word. And you were going to make her happy? I asked. With my stolen intellectual property? We were in love, Greg said, as if that explained everything. Real love, not the boring, comfortable arrangement you two had. Love, I nodded thoughtfully. Is that why she's been avoiding your calls since you got fired? Greg's expression faltered. What? She hasn't returned your calls in a week, Greg. Didn't you know? She's moved on. Found herself a new mark. Some guy from her yoga class with a trust fund and daddy issues. I was making that up, but Greg's face told me I'd hit close to the truth. You're lying. Am I? When's the last time you actually spoke to her? Not texted, not left a voicemail. Actually spoke to her. Greg sat back down heavily. The fight went out of him like air from a punctured balloon. She said she needed time to figure things out, to plan her next move. Her next move doesn't include you, Greg. It never did. You were just a useful idiot with access to my office and a willingness to commit felonies for a woman who was never going to leave her meal ticket. I left Greg staring at his nothing for his Greg. I left Greg in 2006, and Storts to Chustin our daily. I left Greg was insulted. I think what never talking about this. I left Greg was 2006. I helps her see. I truth her woman from Jumi. I left Greg was nothing about it. I left Greg was nothing. I left Greg was nothing. No, I left Greg was nothing about it. 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 I truth her woman who's nothing about it. I left Greg was 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 nothing about it. You said she needed time to figure things out, to plan her next move. It never did. You were just a useful idiot with access to my office and a willingness to commit left Greg staring at his computer screen, probably finally understanding that he'd thrown away his career for someone who'd never cared about him at all. But Samantha wasn't done with me yet. The divorce papers arrived the following week, along with a restraining order claiming I'd been stalking and threatening her. According to the filing, I was an unstable individual who'd become obsessed with surveillance and was making her life unbearable with constant accusations and monitoring. The restraining order was temporary, pending a hearing, but it was enough to cause problems. I had to move out of our house, technically her house now since she'd filed first. I had to stay away from her workplace, her gym, her usual haunts. Most importantly, I couldn't contact any of our mutual friends to defend myself. It was a brilliant legal maneuver. By filing first and claiming harassment, she'd positioned herself as the victim and me as the aggressor. Any attempt I made to tell my side of the story could be construed as violating the restraining order. I moved into a furnished apartment downtown and waited for the hearing. My lawyer, Patricia Wong, was optimistic. She's overplayed her hand, Patricia explained during our prep session. Restraining orders are for genuine threats, not marital disputes. And you have documentation that she was actually the one committing crimes. Will the judge see it that way? Judge Martinez is thorough. She'll want to see evidence, not just accusations. Sluggish. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in family court. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Patricia met me outside the courtroom. Ready for this? Manslaughter. Born ready. That's when I saw them. Samantha, of course, looking perfectly put together in a conservative dress that screamed, victim of domestic misuse. But she wasn't alone. Greg was there, along with Jennifer Bradley, Mike Chen, and 3 other people from our social circle. She brought a cheering section, I observed. Character witnesses, Patricia corrected. People who'll testify about your allegedly threatening behavior. Relinquish 66. Jennifer and Mike saw the videos. They know the truth. Apparently, they've changed their minds. The hearing began with Samantha's testimony. She painted a picture of a marriage that had slowly deteriorated as I became increasingly paranoid and controlling. She described my obsession with surveillance equipment, my accusations of infidelity, my threats to ruin her career if she left me. She was good. Tears at the right moments, voice breaking when she described her fear of coming home to find me waiting with more accusations. She even produced text messages that appeared to show me making threats. The messages were fake, of course, but they looked convincing. Then came the character witnesses. One by one, my former friends testified about my erratic behavior and paranoid accusations. Jennifer described how I'd ambushed everyone at Tom's barbecue with wild conspiracy theories about corporate theft. Mike testified that I'd seemed unhinged when discussing my marriage, obsessed with the idea that Samantha was betraying me. Greg's testimony was the masterpiece. He portrayed himself as a concerned colleague who'd tried to help a friend's troubled marriage, only to be falsely accused of theft and conspiracy. David became convinced that Sam and I were having an affair, Greg testified, his voice heavy with manufactured sadness. He installed cameras in his house, followed Sam to work, accused us of stealing from the company. When I tried to reason with him, he threatened to destroy my career. On Illusion's time they finished, I looked like a paranoid, controlling husband who'd had a breakdown and was lashing out at everyone around me. Then Patricia stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that directly contradicts everything we've just heard. She started with the office security footage. Greg, alone at midnight, copying my files. The timestamp was clear, the image quality perfect. This is from the defendant's company security system, showing Mr. Hartman accessing files he had no authorization to view. Santa's lawyer objected. Relevance, Your Honor? I'm establishing that Mr. Hartman was, in fact, stealing from the plaintiff's employer, making the plaintiff's suspicions entirely reasonable. Judge Martinez allowed the evidence. Next came the audio recordings from Greg's car. Samantha's voice, clear and unmistakable, discussing the theft plan and her strategy for framing me. These recordings were made in a public parking lot, Patricia noted. No expectation of privacy. Smith, the courtroom was dead silent as Samantha's voice filled the room. David's so trusting. He has no idea I've been copying everything for months. I watched my wife's face as her own words destroyed her carefully constructed narrative. The mask slipped again, revealing the cold calculation underneath. But Patricia wasn't finished. Your Honor, I'd also like to present evidence that the plaintiff attempted to frame my client for the very crimes she was committing. She played the recording of Samantha's meeting with Harold Lamont, where she tried to report me for erratic behavior and corporate theft. This meeting took place 3 days before the plaintiff claims to have discovered her husband's surveillance obsession, Patricia noted. She was already planning to accuse him of the crimes she was committing. The fake text messages Samantha had submitted as evidence of my threats were next. Patricia had brought in a digital forensics expert who testified that the messages had been created using spoofing software, not sent from my phone. The metadata clearly shows these messages were generated on the plaintiff's laptop, the expert testified. They were never sent through any cellular network. By the time Patricia finished presenting evidence, Samantha's case had collapsed completely. The restraining order was dismissed, the harassment charges were dropped, and Judge Martinez delivered a lecture about filing false reports that left my wife pale and shaking. But I wasn't done with her yet. Outside the courthouse, Samantha's supporters melted away like snow in summer. Jennifer and Mike couldn't meet my eyes. Greg disappeared into the parking garage without a word. Only Samantha remained, standing on the courthouse steps like a general surveying a lost battlefield. This isn't over, she said as I walked past. Yeah, it is. I'll appeal. I'll file new charges. I'll make your life heck until you give me what I deserve. Ice to her. What you deserve? You mean half of everything I earned while you were planning to steal it all? I mean half of everything we built together. We didn't build anything together, Sam. I built something, and you tried to steal it. There's a difference. I was your wife for 12 years. You were my wife, past tense. Now you're just someone I used to know who committed multiple felonies against me. That's when she tried to hit me. Right there on the courthouse steps, in front of a dozen witnesses and 2 security cameras, Samantha took a swing at my head. I ducked, she stumbled, and courthouse security was on her in seconds. Ma'am, you need to calm down, the security guard said, restraining her arms. He ruined my life, she screamed. He destroyed everything. Vam, you're creating a public disturbance. As security escorted my ex-wife away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine peace. The woman who'd shared my bed for 12 years, who I'd trusted with everything, was finally showing her true face to the world. But the real revenge was still coming. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Patricia Wong. David, you need to see something. Can you come to my office? I found her reviewing a stack of financial documents that looked like they'd been through a shredder and reassembled. What am I looking at? Your wife's financial records. The ones she didn't want anyone to find. Patricia spread the papers across her conference table like she was dealing cards. Remember how Samantha claimed she deserved half of everything because you built it together? Well, it turns out she's been building something too. A debt portfolio that would make a gambling junkie blush. The numbers were staggering. Credit cards maxed out to buy gifts for Greg. A second mortgage on our house that I'd never seen. Personal loans from 3 different banks. A car loan for a BMW that was supposedly for business purposes. How much? $230,000. All in her name, all secured against marital assets. I stared at the papers. She mortgaged our house without telling me? Forged your signature. We can prove it. The bank has surveillance footage of her signing a loan, and the handwriting analysis is conclusive. So she's been stealing from me for even longer than I thought. Gets better. Remember Greg's new apartment? The one with the downtown view? She's been paying his rent for 6 months. Patricia pulled out another document. And this is my favorite. She opened a joint account with Greg using your social security number. Technically, you've been funding their affair. The scope of Samantha's betrayal was breathtaking. While I'd been working overtime to build our future, she'd been systematically looting our present to fund her exit strategy. What are my options? Well, legally, you're entitled to half of all marital assets. But since she's managed to convert most of those assets into debt, your half is negative $115,000. Imprisonment? Meaning she owes you money. A lot of money. Time frame. That night I sat in my apartment and planned my final move. Samantha had spent months setting up elaborate schemes to steal my work and destroy my reputation. She'd manipulated our friends, forged legal documents, and committed multiple felonies. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. The next morning, I called Harold Lamont. "I need a favor," I said. "A big one." "Name it." "I want you to offer Samantha her job back." A long pause. "David, I'm not sure that's wise. Trust me on this. Offer her the job back, with a condition. She has to publicly apologize for the false accusations and admit she was stealing company secrets." "Why would she do that?" "Because she's desperate. She's got $250,000 in debt, no income, and her boyfriend won't return her calls. She'll do anything to get back on her feet." Harold was quiet for a moment. "What aren't you telling me? That this isn't about justice anymore. It's about making sure she never forgets what it costs to betray someone who trusted her." The offer came that afternoon. Harold's assistant called Samantha with a proposal. Return to Meridian as a junior project manager, half her previous salary, with the requirement that she publicly acknowledge her mistakes and clear my name. She took the deal. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for Friday at 3 p.m. The entire company, about 200 employees, gathered in the main conference room to hear Samantha's clarification of recent events. I arrived early and took a seat in the back row. When Samantha walked in, she looked like she'd aged 5 years in 5 weeks. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a discount store outfit that didn't quite fit. Her hair was different, shorter, cheaper. The confidence that had once defined her was nowhere to be seen. She stood at the podium and read from a prepared statement. "I want to address the rumors that have been circulating about my former husband, David Mitchell, and the circumstances of my departure from Meridian." Voice was steady, but I could see her hands shaking. "The accusations I made against David were false. He did not threaten me, stalk me, or attempt to sabotage this company. In fact, David discovered that I had been stealing proprietary information with the intent to sell it to competitors." A murmur went through the crowd. Most of the employees had heard rumors, but this was the first official confirmation. "I also falsely accused David of erratic behavior and attempted to damage his professional reputation. These accusations were part of an effort to cover up my own criminal activity." Took a breath and continued. "David Mitchell is an exemplary employee and was a devoted husband. The failure of our marriage was entirely due to my own choices and actions. I apologize to David, to this company, and to everyone who was misled by my false statements." When she finished, the room was silent. Then, slowly, a few people began to clap. Not enthusiastic applause. More like the polite acknowledgement you'd give to someone who'd just confessed to a crime. Samantha left the podium without looking at anyone and walked straight out of the building. I never saw her again. That evening, I was cleaning out the last of my belongings from our old house. Now, her house. Along with the $250,000 in debt secured against it, when I found a photo album I'd forgotten about. Our wedding pictures. 12 years ago, both of us young and optimistic, surrounded by friends and family, promising to love and honor each other forever. I looked at the woman in the white dress, radiant with happiness, gazing adoringly at her new husband. Had she been planning this even then? Had any of it been real? I tossed the album in the trash and walked out of the house for the last time. 6 months later, I was settling into my new life. The promotion had come through, along with stock options that were worth more than I'd ever imagined. I'd bought a condo downtown, joined a gym, started dating again. My phone rang one evening as I was making dinner. Unknown number. David, it's Jennifer Bradley. Spoken to Jennifer since the courthouse hearing. She'd been one of Samantha's character witnesses, testifying about my erratic behavior. What can I do for you, Jennifer? I wanted to apologize. For the hearing. For not believing you. For everything. Okay. We had coffee last week, Sam and I. She told me the truth about what really happened. Which truth? She's told several versions. She's lost everything, David. The house, the car, her job at Meridian. She's living in a studio apartment and working at a call center. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no regret. That's unfortunate. She asked me to call you, to see if you might be willing to help her get back on her feet. Help her how? Maybe a loan, or a recommendation for a better job. She knows she made mistakes, but she's learned from them. I set down my wine glass and walked to the window of my condo. The city spread out below me, lights twinkling like stars. Jennifer, let me ask you something. If someone stole your life savings, destroyed your reputation, and tried to have you arrested for crimes they committed, would you give them a loan? It's different with marriage. No, it's not. Marriage doesn't give you the right to commit felonies against your spouse. She's desperate, David. She made some bad choices, but she doesn't deserve to lose everything. She didn't lose everything, I said. She gambled everything and lost. There's a difference. Hung up the phone and returned to making dinner. The final chapter of my revenge came a year later, completely by accident. I was having lunch at a downtown restaurant when I overheard a familiar voice at the next table. Greg Hartman, talking to someone about a business opportunity. The technology is revolutionary, he was saying. Encryption algorithms that could change the entire cybersecurity industry. I turned slightly and saw Greg sitting across from a middle-aged man in an expensive suit. Between them on the table were printouts that looked suspiciously like my old development notes. And you developed this yourself? The man asked. Absolutely. I spent 2 years perfecting the code while working at my previous company. I took out my phone and started recording. What kind of investment are you looking for? The potential investor asked. $2 million should be enough for initial development and marketing. I already have interest from several major tech companies. Lifting listened to Greg pitch my stolen algorithms for another 10 minutes, making increasingly outrageous claims about their capabilities and his role in developing them. When lunch ended, I followed the investor outside. Excuse me, I said. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation with Mr. Hartman. The man looked annoyed. I'm sorry, this is a private matter. I'm David Mitchell. I'm the actual developer of those algorithms Greg was trying to sell you. Got his attention. I spent the next hour in a coffee shop, showing the investor my original development files, patent applications, and the security footage of Greg stealing the code. So he's trying to sell you my work, I concluded. Work he stole from my company and was fired for stealing. The investor, whose name was Robert Chen, stared at the evidence in disbelief. He seemed so credible. He had technical specifications, development timelines, even testimonials from supposed beta testers. All fake. Greg's background is in sales, not development. He couldn't code his way out of a paper bag. Relinquish shook his head. I was about to write him a check for $50,000 as a good faith investment. You might want to reconsider that. Not only reconsidered, he reported Greg to the police for attempted fraud. 2 weeks later, I read in the local business journal that Greg had been arrested for trying to sell stolen intellectual property to multiple investors. Apparently, I wasn't his only victim. He'd been running the same scam with code stolen from his new employer. The article mentioned that he was facing federal charges for wire fraud and could be looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction reading that article. Not because Greg was going to prison, though he'd certainly earned it. but because his own greed and stupidity had finally caught up with him. The last I heard about Samantha came from an unexpected source, my divorce attorney. "Thought you'd want to know," Patricia said during a phone call. "Your ex-wife filed for bankruptcy last month. Not surprising given her debt situation. Interesting is what she listed as assets. Apparently, she's been telling people she's entitled to half the value of your patents." I laughed. "My patents? That she tried to steal? She's claiming that since you developed them during your marriage, she has community property rights. How's that working out for her?" The bankruptcy judge was not impressed, especially when I submitted all our evidence from the divorce proceedings. "So she gets nothing? Less than nothing." The judge ordered her to pay restitution to Meridian for the attempted theft. Apparently, they decided to press charges after all. I hung up the phone feeling lighter than I had in months. The woman who'd tried to destroy my life had managed to destroy her own instead. That evening, I was having dinner with Sarah, a woman I've been dating for several months, when she asked me something that made me pause. "Do you ever regret how things ended with your ex-wife?" I thought about it for a moment. Did I regret exposing Samantha's crimes? Did I regret fighting back, instead of just walking away quietly? "No," I said finally. "I regret trusting her in the first place. I regret not seeing the signs earlier. But I don't regret making sure she faced consequences for what she did. Even though it destroyed her life, should destroyed her own life. I just made sure everyone knew about it." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "My ex-husband cheated on me with my sister. When I found out, I just filed for divorce and moved on. Sometimes I wonder if I should have fought back. What would fighting back have accomplished? Maybe nothing. But at least they would have known there were consequences for betraying someone who loved them." I reached across the table and took her hand. The best revenge is living well. But sometimes, people need to understand that actions have consequences. Is that what you did? Made sure there were consequences? Sure, the truth came out. What happened after that was their choice. 2 years after my divorce was finalized, I received an invitation that surprised me. Tom Bradley was having another barbecue, and he wanted me to come. "I know things got weird during your divorce," Tom said when he called. "But you're still family, David. You always will be." I almost declined. The last time I'd been to Tom's house, half the people there had believed I was having a mental breakdown. But curiosity won out. The barbecue was smaller this time. Just Tom and Jennifer, Mike and his wife Lisa, and 2 other couples I didn't recognize well. The conversation was careful at first, like everyone was walking on eggshells. Finally, Mike broke the tension. "David, I owe you an apology, a big one." "For what?" "For believing Sam's lies, for testifying against you at that hearing, for being a terrible friend when you needed support." Crimson nodded. "We all owe you an apology. Sam was very convincing, but that's no excuse. We should have known you better than that." "How did you find out the truth?" "Sam Jennifer last year," Tom said. Drunk, rambling, feeling sorry for herself. She admitted everything. The theft, the lies, the fake evidence. She said she'd been planning to leave you for months, but wanted to make sure she got everything in the divorce. She also admitted that Greg wasn't her first affair, Jennifer added. There were others, including someone from your old company. I felt a flicker of the old anger, but it passed quickly. Samantha's betrayals couldn't hurt me anymore. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because we want you to know that we know," Mike said. "We know who you really are, and we know what she really was, and we're sorry it took us so long to figure it out." We spent the rest of the evening talking about normal things. Work, sports, vacation plans. It felt good to be around old friends again, even if the trust would never be quite the same. As I was leaving, Jennifer pulled me aside. "David, can I ask you something? When you were going through all that, when everyone was against you, how did you keep going?" I thought about her question. How had you guessed with you? I thought about her Junda. How did you living on to? How Junta-leverly with you? I thought about her question. How had I kept going when my wife was stealing from me, my friends were abandoning me, and everyone thought I was losing my mind? "I knew who I was," I said finally, "and I knew what the truth was. Everything else was just noise." "But you tempted to just give up? To let her have what she wanted and walk away? It would have been easier to just disappear, start over somewhere else, pretend none of it ever happened. So why didn't you? Because she was counting on me to give up. She was blessed in function ever. Because she was not letting it me. Because she was a lot of two things of new too. Because she was lightly to give up. Therefore was counting on me to give up. She'd planned the whole thing around the assumption that I was too weak, too trusting, too nice to fight back. Proving her wrong was worth more than my peace of mind. Jennifer nodded slowly. I think I understand. Do you? You didn't want revenge. You wanted justice. Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted her to know that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I drove home through the quiet streets, thinking about justice and revenge, and the difference between them. Had I been seeking justice when I exposed Samantha's crimes? Or had I just wanted to hurt her the way she'd hurt me? Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe the important thing was that she'd faced consequences for her choices, and I'd rebuilt my life on my own terms. 3 months ago, I got a call that brought everything full circle. Mr. Mitchell, this is Detective Sarah Williams with the Financial Crimes Unit. I'm calling about your former wife, Samantha Mitchell. My heart rate spiked. What about her? She's been arrested for embezzlement. We found evidence that she's been stealing from her current employer for the past 6 months. I see. We're reviewing her history of financial crimes, and your case keeps coming up. We'd like to ask you some questions about her methods, her patterns of behavior. I met with Detective Williams the following week. She was a sharp woman in her 40s, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much human greed. Tell me about your ex-wife's personality, she said. How did she justify her actions? She crimes, I said. In her mind, she was entitled to whatever she could take. If someone was stupid enough to trust her, that was their fault, not hers. Classic sociopathic behavior. No empathy, no remorse, just an endless sense of entitlement. Has she shown any remorse for her recent crimes? Detective Williams laughed bitterly. She's claiming her current employer owes her money for overtime and unpaid expenses. She says she was just taking what she was owed. How much did she steal? $40,000 over 39 millions. $40,000 just exclusively stuff. How much did she steal? $40,000 over 39 millions. She says she's still figure out in restaurant thing and totally. How much did she steal? How much did she steal? How much did she steal? How much did she steal entire thing? How comes to be the very clear? Like she show it. She still make that stealing them that are still in stick thing. How much did she steal that? She said she still were them. How much did she steal that? Like she showed any remorse, unless she $40,000 over 6 months. She was very careful about it. Small amounts, spread across multiple accounts, always with some plausible explanation. Her boss got suspicious when she started living beyond her means. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, a new car, all on a call center salary. I shook my head. She never learned. People like your ex-wife don't learn. They just get better at hiding their crimes until they get overconfident and make a mistake. What's going to happen to her? Federal embezzlement detention-will visit that she was. Like she's given her history, she's looking at 2 to 5 years minimum. After the detective left, I sat in my office thinking about the woman I'd once loved. Samantha had been given multiple chances to change her life, to learn from her mistakes, to become a better person. Instead, she doubled down on the same destructive patterns that had destroyed our marriage. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, just a kind of tired sadness for the person she could have been if she'd made different choices. Last week, I ran into Greg Hartman at a coffee shop downtown. He looked terrible, thinner, older, with the haunted expression of someone who'd lost everything and knew it was his own fault. "David," he said, approaching my table hesitantly. "Can we talk?" "Sure." He sat down across from me, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. For stealing your work. For lying about you. For being part of Sam's plan to destroy your life." "Okay. I know it doesn't mean anything now. But I was in love with her. I thought she loved me too. I thought we were going to build a life together. What happened to that plan?" Greg laughed bitterly. "She dumped me the day after we got fired. Said I was a liability. That being seen with me would hurt her chances of rebuilding her reputation. Misinformation. I'm sorry. Opposition. Are you? Really? MSNBC, I considered the question. Was I sorry that Greg had been used and discarded by the woman he'd betrayed me for? Yeah, I am. Nobody deserves to be manipulated like that. Even someone who helped manipulate you? Even then. Ragasso Greg stared into his coffee for a long moment. I heard about her arrest, the embezzlement charges. Slamming. Mensajes, part of me feels like I should visit her in jail. Try to help somehow. Why? Because, despite everything, I still care about her. Isn't that pathetic? I thought about my answer carefully. Greg had been Samantha's victim almost as much as I had been. She'd used his feelings for her to turn him into a criminal, then abandoned him when he was no longer useful. It's not pathetic to care about someone, I said finally, but it's important to understand who you're actually caring about. Dismanto. What do you mean? Shameful. The woman you fell in love with was a performance, Greg. An act designed to get you to do what she wanted. The real Samantha is the one who's sitting in jail right now, facing federal charges for stealing from another employer. Wait, Greg nodded slowly. I know that. Intellectually, I know that. But emotionally, you're grieving for someone who never really existed. Junction. How do you get over something like that? Reshape. I thought about my own journey from betrayed husband to the man I was today. How had I gotten over the loss of the woman I thought I'd married? Time, I said, and accepting that the person you loved was never real. Do you ever miss her? The version of her you thought you knew? Sometimes. But then I remember that the version of her I loved would never have done the things she did. Greg finished his coffee and stood up. Thanks for talking to me, David. I know I don't deserve your kindness. Everyone deserves kindness, Greg. Just not everyone deserves trust. As I watched him walk away, I realized something had shifted inside me. The anger I'd carried for so long was finally gone, replaced by something closer to peace. Samantha and Greg had made their choices. They'd faced the consequences, and I'd moved on to build a better life than I'd ever had with either of them. That night, Sarah and I were having dinner when she asked me a question that made me smile. What are you thinking about? You look content. I am content, I said. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I want to be. No regrets about how everything played out? None at all. Even about your marriage ending? I thought about the question seriously. Did I regret that my marriage to Samantha had ended? I regret that it took me so long to see who she really was, I said. But I don't regret that it ended. If it hadn't, I never would have met you. Sarah smiled and reached across the table to take my hand. Well, when you put it that way, I added, the best revenge really is living well. Is that what this is? Revenge? No, I said, looking around the restaurant where we'd had our first date, thinking about the life I'd built since my divorce. This is just living. 6 months later, Sarah and I got engaged. The proposal was simple. No elaborate schemes, no hidden cameras, no surveillance equipment. Just two people who trusted each other completely. The wedding is planned for next spring. Small ceremony, close friends only. People who know who we really are and love us anyway. I'm not the same man who walked into his home office 2 years ago to find Greg Hartman stealing his life's work. That man was naive, trusting, willing to overlook red flags in the name of keeping peace. The man I am now is wiser, more careful, but not cynical. I've learned to trust but verify, to love but protect myself, to be kind but not foolish. Samantha taught me that some people will take everything you give them and still want more, that loyalty and love mean nothing to someone who sees relationships as transactions. But she also taught me that I'm stronger than I thought I was, that I can fight back when necessary, that I don't have to accept betrayal just to keep the peace. The last time I heard Samantha's name was at a company Christmas party. Someone mentioned that she'd been sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for embezzlement. Isn't that your ex-wife? Someone asked. Former wife, I corrected. Ancient history. And that's exactly what she is. Ancient history. A chapter of my life that's closed, filed away, no longer relevant to who I am or where I'm going. Sometimes people ask me if I think she'll ever change, if prison might teach her the lessons that losing everything else couldn't. I don't know, and I don't care. Samantha's future is her responsibility now, just like her past was her choice. I'm focused on my own future, with Sarah, with the company I helped build, with the life I've created from the ashes of the one that was stolen from me. The best revenge, it turns out, isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so good that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. It's becoming someone so strong that their opinion of you doesn't matter. It's living so well that their absence improves your life instead of diminishing it. That's the revenge I chose, and it was worth every moment of the fight.